In this video, we're going to talk about adding custom fonts to your website. One of the things that you can really do to make your website stand out is to use custom fonts. Now, remember when we talked about fonts when we were working on our CSS, and I mentioned that for a font to render on a browser, the user has to have that same font installed. And so that's why even when we're using, simple fonts like Verdana or Arial, we would put a comma and then put sans serif after it or serif after it, depending on what kind of font you're using, so that there would be a default for that to go back to if necessary, if the font that you had chosen was not available. Fonts can be tricky because you can't predict exactly what someone else has available to be rendered by their browser. You can solve the problem by actually downloading a custom font file, including that in your website, and then linking to that file. Then you are sure the user has access to it because it's in your control. It's on the server, and you know that they can access that and they will be able to see the font as you want them to see it. How do you get a custom font? Well, there's lots of different places. The site I like to use is called Font Squirrel. It's a little bit annoying with the ads, but it really does have free downloadable fonts. I have never gotten a virus from it, and I've had really good luck with it. So this is the one I'm going to show you. It's not the only source, and you're welcome to find your own other sources, but this is one that you can definitely start with. So you can use the search feature. I actually really like the classifications, and just for the purposes of demonstration, let's go ahead and click on sans serif, and you see there's tons of sans serif fonts, and you can see they have all sorts of different looks to them, and they can get pretty fancy. And you can, of course, limit your search by adding additional tags or classifications and narrowing down what it is you're looking for. Like say if we did novelty, that's going to really reduce the number of hits that come back on this, right? And so then you can see smaller list. Now, when you're actually going to choose a font, I will note, I don't actually, so when we see ones like this that say off-site, that has to do with if the copyright is held by someone who's not willing to share with this site, and they might charge for it, and I don't necessarily trust the off-site locations, so I actually don't use ones if they're off-site. I stick with the ones I can actually get from this site. Let's just pick the first one on the list here and take a look at it, and I'll show you exactly what you need here. When you're looking at the font, you'll see that you have some different options here. What you're really looking for is the web font kit. That's what we care about. That's the thing that has the file that you need to actually render your font on a web browser. It's gotten a lot simpler over time. When I first started doing this, you had to have a whole bunch of files for different sorts of browsers, and you had to make sure you had a path to each one of those. But nowadays, you just need a WOFF file, and it works as it says here in all modern browsers, so that's great. And then what you do is just download the font face kit. And again, just as a best practice, this is going to be a raw file here. That's not going to be one that's actually going to be used in the website. So I don't want to put it in the same place where my web hierarchy is. I'm going to save this in a separate location, and then I'll show you what you need to do to this zip file in order to get it to a usable file that you want on your website. Okay, so here is my downloaded zip file. I'm keeping it in a folder of fonts, of downloaded fonts. And what you need to do first is you need to extract all of the information from the zip file. And if you use the context menu, so in this case I just right-clicked and I hit extract all. So you could double-click on a zip file and it'll show you what's in there, but you can't actually use those files until you've extracted them. So make sure you go through the process of extracting first. And when it's done extracting, typically it's going to open up the location in the File Explorer, and you'll see that there's the license file, there is an HTML file that gives you a little how to use, and then there is the web font folder, which is what you want, and then you want to actually get in here, and remember you're looking for that .woff file. It does even come with a style sheet file that actually gives you an example of the code. This is actually more than you need. And so I'm going to show you how to just do this directly, but it's going to look like this. This is really the one file that you actually need to copy over into your website. So what I'm going to do in the structure of my website, I'm going to create a new folder called fonts. And then I'm going to take this WOFF file and put it over there. Okay, and that's really all that I needed from all of that. So now we want to go back to our style sheet. I'm going to put this in the main style, And we need to write a little bit of code, and this again is in our CSS file, and this is the one that's going to apply to both the pages. Once again, remember where we are. We're here in this CSS folder, and we want to we want to be able to point to a font that is in the fonts folder. The code that we need is @font_face. And this is basically just allowing us to define a new font face. And we start with font family. Now, remember, in most cases, when you're using that font family property, what you're doing is telling it what font you want to be used in that HTML element. Well, @font_face obviously isn't an HTML element. It is declaring a new font face. So when we're using the font family property here, we're actually giving it a name. And I'm going to use 20dB, which is the start of the font name. And then we just need to tell it, we just need to point to where that file is. So we're going to use the src property for that, just like we would in an image. So src and href are both types of pointer properties that we can use to locate other files. So I'm going to use that, and then it's going to be URL, just like when we're doing our images, right? Just like when we're doing our images down here. So same deal. And so we want to get out to that main folder, and now we want fonts, and then we need the exact file name. So 20db -webfont.woff. Okay. Now that we've actually defined this as a font, we can use it in the font family property in any of our CSS tags. I'm going to apply it here in the H1. You do need to put that in quotation marks. And then I'm going to increase the size as well so we can really get the effect of the font. Okay, let's see what we've got. All right, so take a look. So you can see you've got your fancy font. It's still maintained the text shadow and all of the rest of your styling, the same color, all that stuff. It just now is using this custom font. Custom fonts can be a really nice way to add some visual interest to your page. You use them in combination with CSS styling to have that effect available throughout your entire website. And as you can see, it's not that difficult. You just need to locate a font, get that WOFF file, put it in the structure of your site, and then just make sure you're pointing to it, and you've got your custom fonts.